dugsiga boardingka iyo maalinlaha ah ee Amano Boarding and Day School.
How are you, grade 6? Welcome to our lesson, our social lesson. Today we shall look at the British rule in Somaliland. But before that, in our previous lesson, we had looked at the British rule in Sudan, how the British came and occupied Sudan. They conquered and began ruling Sudan. But today, we are looking at the British in Somaliland. How did they come to Somaliland? How did they come to start ruling Somaliland by force? Those are the key things that we shall be looking at. Who welcomed them to Somaliland? How did they even cross and come to Somaliland? Was there something that motivated them? Was there any reason that made them to cross all the way and come to Somaliland? Those are the things that we are looking at in our lesson today. And this means that by the end of this lesson, you should be in a position as a learner to name the year in which the British occupied Somaliland. You should be in a position to state some of the reasons that made the British cross and come to Somaliland. You should also be in a position to state some of the agreement that made the British to be welcomed, because they had an agreement before being welcomed. Those are the things that we shall be looking at in our lesson today. And to begin with, it is actually clear, as you can see here, that the British occupied Somaliland in the year 1884. In the year 1884. Where had they come from? During those years, the British were actually in some of the countries in the Horn of Africa and even somewhere in Yemen. And to be specific, the British crossed the Gulf of Aden from Yemen, where they were ruling already. They crossed and came to Somaliland. Now, what are some of the reasons that made them to cross and come to Somaliland? Even at home, there are some reasons that can make you to move from where you stay in the sitting room to your bedroom. The reason is to go and sleep, or to go and maybe collect your PlayStation, something. So also the same, the British were motivated by some reasons to cross from Yemen and come to Somaliland. Some of the reasons that made them come to Somaliland are as follow. They actually came to Somaliland to collect firewood or charcoal, simply for their soldiers. Their soldiers were already in Yemen, so they came to collect charcoal. We all know the use of charcoal. At home we use charcoal to cook food, to prepare food. They needed charcoal. They needed it so that they can take it to their soldiers to go and prepare food all the time. And they know, because Somaliland actually had trees, some of the best trees that can be used to burn charcoal. Second point is that actually they came to get meat for their soldiers. The soldiers in Yemen needed food to eat, and because Somaliland had a lot of cattle, a lot of livestock, they quickly had to come through boats and even their jets to come to Somaliland and get livestock, ship them to Yemen. This livestock would later be slaughtered and given to their soldiers. The meat would later be given to their soldiers. Then the other point is that they actually wanted free workers, or actually these workers were supposed to go and work for their soldiers in Yemen. And when we talk about free workers, we actually refer to the labor. So here, workers to work, we also call them labor, or we refer to it as labor, the people who can go and work. So the British actually wanted labor, people who can go and work, and it was for free. They wanted free labor. The next point, and I think the last point, is that they wanted to monitor the ships navigating the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. Now, navigating, the key word here is navigating. Navigating simply means sailing. The ships that are sailing, navigating with a specific reason, with a purpose, with an intention. So the ships were sailing, could be the army ships from a different country or maybe an enemy country, so they wanted to monitor were the ships from an enemy country. That's what they wanted to do. Now, going forward, we shall also be looking at how the British actually crossed from Yemen and came to our country, Somaliland. And here is just actually an image of how it happened. Here, you can see we have something here. Right now, you can see Yemen is here. This is Yemen. The British crossed. They were actually in Yemen during that time in 1884. When they crossed, you can imagine now they crossed the Gulf of Aden, which is where, okay, most of you who have gone to Berbera, you must have seen the Gulf of Aden. That's the Gulf of Aden. It is actually connecting with the Red Sea to the top. So they had to cross the Gulf of Aden. Then they came straight at the Berbera and then came into the interior of Somaliland, into the hinterland. And this is how they found themselves in Somaliland. They had to cross. Now, after they had crossed, after they had come to Somaliland, what we know is that the people of Somaliland actually, as we see Somaliland here in the map, it was occupied by the people of Somaliland. So when the British crossed the Gulf of Aden and landed into Somaliland, they had landed in a different territory. But because they had powerful weapons, they had guns, and the people of Somaliland didn't have the guns, they were powerful. Now, they were welcomed, yes, but on some conditions. You know, even if a visitor comes at home, you'd like to see who this visitor is. You'd want to inquire and maybe try to ask some questions like, who are you? Where are you from? Why did you come to our place or maybe to our house? Who welcomed you? So when the British came, they were actually Somali leaders. Some of these traditional leaders included the sultans and even the chiefs and even village elders. So when the British came, actually, we're saying that when they arrived in Somaliland, they found the local leaders like the chiefs and sultans. These local leaders welcomed them, but on condition that they had to sign some agreements. Like you see, when you doubt that a certain visitor is not a good person, then you have to sign some agreement. You have to understand, like to agree with each other, that if you are welcome to my house, but you will not step any foot to my bedroom, you will not go to the kitchen. Those are some of the rules that actually you can agree with your visitor on. The British likewise had to agree with the local Somali leaders that they should sign some rules, some agreement. They had to sign. This agreement was signed on a skin of an animal. It was written, actually the rules were written on the skin of an animal. Now, some of the rules are here, as we shall be looking at them, that number one, no part of Somaliland would be offered to the British, or it would be offered to a different territory. So Somaliland, the land of Somaliland, people were supposed to remain intact. It was supposed to remain that way. Then point number two, the agreement that were made by the British and the Somali leaders are that no British woman would deliver babies on Somaliland soil. Interesting. Then the third one is that the British government would respect the culture and even the religion of the Somaliland people. Somaliland people had their culture and religion, which is Islam. So when the British came, they would not go. They even would not think of trying to interfere with the culture and religion under the agreement that was signed. Now, among other things, as you can see here, actually, the leaders were around. But the problem is that later on, as the British continued to settle, they had powerful weapons. They had now taken Somaliland. They had settled. You know, to settle actually means like to bring the government. They even made Hargeisa the capital where they could operate from. They operated from Hargeisa. They had the authority. They had the power. Now, what happened? We shall be looking at that. That actually, going forward, during this time, the British actually violated the rules. They did not stick to the agreement. And when you break an agreement, that means there is a consequence. Either the other person that you signed with will not be happy with you, will fight you. See? That is why the people of Somaliland, through their leaders, were not happy. Now, some of the things that actually were violated, we shall be looking at them, is that in the year 1888, the British made a border between Somaliland and Djibouti. Initially, that border was not there, and the border is a line that separates one country from another, one thing from another. That is one of the things that they violated. The other thing that they broke, actually, the other rule, we shall be looking at even the map itself. The map is here. That map here shows Somaliland and some of the borders, some of the boundaries between Somaliland and the neighbors. Here, Djibouti is here. This is Djibouti. So we are saying that the British actually drew the boundary. The boundary is here. It was not there. It did not exist before they came. They drew the boundaries. They broke the rules. Now, as we sum up our lesson today, we shall also be looking at, we shall also in our next lesson be looking at how most of the boundaries came to be the source of conflict, the source of war, or the cause of war between Somaliland and the neighbors. But most important, we have said that in our lesson today, the British came and occupied Somaliland in the year 1884. We have also looked at the reasons that made them to come and settle in Somaliland. Some of them are, one, they came actually to get charcoal and firewood. They also came to look for meat for their soldiers, right? They also came to monitor other ships that cross the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea, and even through the Indian Ocean. But later when they came, we have said in our lesson today that they were welcomed by Somali leaders. The local Somali leaders then were the village elders, the sultans, and the chiefs. They welcomed them, but they signed an agreement. And we have looked at even actually the 4 agreement codes that were signed. That one, no part of Somaliland would be taken away. No British woman would give birth to babies in Somaliland territory, among others. And at the end of this lesson, down there, I'm going to provide you with some notes and questions that you're going to go through and attempt, so that later on, when we meet in our next lesson, we shall also do correction and look at them in also a different way. Thank you for listening. My name is Teacher Eric. Bye. Have a nice time.